single in the walls. Let me check on anything else.
Would it be like if you have a lot of, because there's a lot of capillaries and blood vessels?
Yeah, exactly.
Then it's more, again, it's like a...
It's more surface area, isn't it? So maybe here in the large surface area, so we'll talk about number of alveoli, but I think we also need to mention that there are lots of capillaries as well, because it's not good just to have lots of alveoli, you need to have lots of capillaries receiving those gases and also, or delivering carbon dioxide. So multiple capillaries surrounding alveoli. So Terry, that was a really good point as well, good addition. So it's not just large surface area of alveoli themselves, but also large surface area of all the capillaries which are coming into the lungs. Right. So one little thing which I wanted to mention, to go over a short diffusion pathway. And it sort of links nicely also with our last assignment for this unit, where we start talking about diseases. So in that picture you can see that your alveoli is very thin. Your capillaries are very thin, they're all very closely positioned together to give you that short diffusion pathway, and that's what healthy lungs look like, right? Now, if you smoke, I don't know if anybody does, all right, not naming any names, but when you smoke, what happens is that those particles in the smoke, after a while, are going to start well, essentially destroying some of those cells, because you're talking about very thin surfaces, right? Everything is super delicate, and smoke can start destroying essentially those walls of alveoli and some of the walls of capillary. Your body is pretty good at repairing itself, right? So what it can do then is it's going to start repairing those surfaces again and again and again. But it can only repair them to an extent. Imagine if you had a knife and you cut yourself, and after a while you probably have a little scar that it fades and fades and fades, and in most cases, if it's not a very serious cut, it just goes back to normal where you can't see it. But imagine if you take the same knife and cut it in the same place again and again and again and again. And so after a while, what happens is you're going to start building up so-called scar tissue. And the same is going to be true not just for your skin, but also for the surfaces inside your alveoli. So then, instead of nice thin layer, right, in your alveoli, you're going to have scar tissue. And scar tissue is not epithelial tissue, it's connective tissue, a bit like cartilage, right? So it's much thicker. So instead, my nice thin page, yeah, nice little short diffusion pathway, I'm going to then start to have really thick pathway. And so the gases, instead of being able to diffuse easily in and out, they won't be able to get through those areas of scar tissue, okay? And therefore, you can start thinking, how is that going to affect the amount of oxygen in your blood? Well, you tell me.
It's going to be harder for it to get in there.
It's going to be harder to get for this oxygen to get in, and therefore your blood saturation, your oxygen saturation is going to be lower potentially. Right? And then your body is going to try to compensate for that by trying to take more breaths in, because there is a kind of negative loop happening, saying, okay, we haven't got enough oxygen, let's try to speed up breathing, see if that's going to help. And so you end up taking more frequent and shorter breaths. And of course you can take it to a logical conclusion, and maybe those of you who already work in healthcare, you have some patients who are walking about a bit like this. right? So every step, big breath, big, lots of air needs to get in. Why is that? Because they have reduced ability for their surfaces to work efficiently, right? And you might develop this condition, which is a bit like the type of symptoms would be walking around like this, barrel chest, and taking us lots of short, labored breaths called emphysema. So emphysema, pretty much 100% is caused by smoking. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. If you stop smoking, again, your body is very good at repairing itself. If you quit, then after a number of years, you might get back, situation where some of your scar tissue is going to be replaced, dissolved, and you go back to more alveoli being healthy. So it's never too late to kind of rethink. Yeah, but think about that's what's happening when you take that puff of smoke. That's
What's the
happening.
condition called?
It's called emphysema. So that particular condition, we have built up of scar tissue in your alveoli, and it's, as I said, predominantly caused by smoking, emphysema. I hope I spelled it correctly. So please check, right? Google it and double check, right? Because I'm working from memory. I think that's how it's spelled,
I
emphysema.
think Americans spell it differently.
Do they spell it differently in America? Well, so let them, as long as we've got one spelling correctly, either British or American, I'm happy with that.
So obviously a lot of lung cancers are caused by smoking.
Yeah.
But isn't like the most
But
common one squamous cell carcinomas?
So that would be, but that's slightly different mechanism. So with emphysema, we were talking about the scar tissue and therefore longer diffusion pathway and therefore less oxygen in the bloodstream and less ability to get rid of carbon dioxide. Cancer is something a little bit different because what happens with cancer is those toxins in the smoke cause mistakes in DNA, and that in turn causes cells to start replicating, doubling themselves very quickly, and that's what tumors are. So this is cells which go out of control in terms of replicating themselves. Instead of replicating themselves every once every so many months, they suddenly start replicating themselves every few days, let's say. Yeah. And so you start to have this growth, which then pushes all the healthy tissues out of the way. And obviously the bigger the cancer is, the bigger the tumor is, the less amount of healthy tissue you have left. So it's a different mechanism. The symptoms, some of the symptoms might be similar, again, shortness of breath, etc., because your body tries to compensate for less amount of oxygen getting into your bloodstream. But the mechanism and the structural differences are going to be different. But that's going to be topic for assignment 3, so I'm going to kind of stop here and not talk about diseases any longer. Okay? All right.
That is spelled right, by the way, as well.
Okay, brilliant.